Welcome to the candidate forum put on by 10 local leagues of the League of Women Voters of Illinois. This is for the contested race in the Republican primary for the 11th Congressional District. My name is Patty Lackman, and I am from the League of Women Voters of Central Kane County. A contested race is when someone has a direct opponent on this particular ballot. If a candidate does not have an opponent, the race is not contested. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization that neither supports nor opposes candidates or parties for any office. The League's purpose is to promote political responsibility through the informed and active participation of citizens in government. Providing this forum allows citizens to become better informed about the issues facing their community and to become better acquainted with the candidates running for office. We are happy to provide this service for the community. The candidates have agreed to abide by the rules set forth prior to this forum. Jan Dorner from the Elmhurst League will be our moderator, and Kelly Rotella and Carol Grom will be our timekeepers. Can you kind of raise your hand over here? We are being aired live by BATV, both on their cable channel and on their YouTube channel. The video will be available on the local league's website and on the Illinois Voter Guide. We have Andrew Van Meter from BATV manning the booth over there. Without any further ado, I would like to have Jan Dorner, our moderator, come up. Thank you.
Thank you, Patty. The League of Women Voters' purpose is to promote political responsibility through the informed and active participation of citizens in government. Providing this forum allows citizens to become better informed about the issues facing their community and to become better acquainted with the candidates running for office. We are happy to provide this service for the community. Questions have been collected from our members and the community before this forum and were screened for duplication, clarity, and appropriateness to the office being discussed. The format tonight is a candidate forum, not a debate forum. Candidates are expected to accurately represent the facts. The League of Women Voters is not responsible for the accuracy of statements made by candidates. It is the responsibility of the public, news media, opposing candidates et al. To fact-check statements made by candidates if deemed necessary. This forum is between 3 of the 6 candidates seeking to represent the Republicans for the 11th Congressional District in the U.S. House of Representatives in the general election. Catalina Loff and Andrea Hegg declined our invitation, and today we heard that Cassandra Tanner Miller's doctor recommended that she not attend tonight. The remaining candidates have agreed to abide by the rules set forth prior to this forum, among them being that no voice, image, or other duplication of the forum may be used by any candidate's representative or campaign in any campaign advertising. Each candidate will present a 1-minute introductory statement. The order to start is alphabetical. Then questions will be asked, and each candidate will have up to 1 minute to respond in alternating order. Closing statements will be at 1 minute as well. There will be the timers over here, and I'll ask you to adhere to these time limits. When you see the stop sign, you may finish your sentence, but we ask that you conclude. Our candidates tonight are Mark Joseph Carroll, Jerry Evans, Susan Hathaway Altman. So let's begin with the opening statement. Mark Carroll, please.
Thank you. Thank you, League of Women's Voters. My name is Mark Joseph Carroll, and I'm running as a Republican for the 11th U.S. Congressional District. My skills, background, education, and experience make me the best qualified candidate to stand toe-to-toe with Bill Foster and defeat him in November. I'm the candidate that is most prepared to govern on day 1 of taking office. I'm a lifelong Illinois resident. I'm the youngest of 9 children. I'm a graduate of Joliet Catholic Academy, Hillsdale College, and NIU College of Law. I'm a resident of North Aurora, where I live with my wife and 3 sons. I'm a coach. I'm a volunteer at countless events at our church, school, and in the community. I'm past president of the North Aurora Lions Club, and I'm the only candidate who has ever held an elected office. I am a practicing attorney with over 20 years' experience, and my background, skills, education, and experience have prepared me for this office. My name is Mark Joseph Carroll, and I'm asking for your vote on June 28, 2022. Thank you.
Thank you. Jerry Evans, your opening statement.
Thanks. My name is Jerry Evans. I'm a husband. I'm a father. I have a beautiful wife named Lisa, and I have 2 amazing sons, Michael and Levi. I'm a small businessman and entrepreneur. I own a music school where I employ upwards around 15 people, as well as have hundreds of music school students that come to us each week. And I care tremendously and deeply about America. I believe that leadership is about service, authenticity, sacrifice. It's not about me. It's about you. And I'm standing up to run for U.S. Congress, to go ahead and stand up, number 1, for a free economy. I'm an avid anti-socialist, and I believe we need to curb inflation. On top of that, I care tremendously about enforcing the law and making sure we support law enforcement and our police, as well as I care tremendously about free educational opportunity and making sure we have educational opportunity for all of our young people. On top of that, I really believe that there is a movement happening in America, and it's not about me, it's about you. And I would love to have an opportunity to serve you in Congress. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Susan Hathaway Altman, your opening statement.
Hi, my name is Susan Hathaway Altman, and thank you, League of Women Voters, for this opportunity tonight. I'm from Geneva, Illinois, and I have 3 beautiful daughters, 2 of which are my biological daughters, and 1 is a daughter that I adopted through foster care, and I also have a beautiful grandson from her. I cared for 6 total foster kids over a 3-year period in my life. I belong to Holy Cross Catholic Church right down the road here. And I do a lot of community involvement. I am working with Lazarus House in St. Charles on a variety of different things to help with their organization, as well as new as an ombudsman for the Illinois Department of Aging. I've been working in corporate America as a vice president of business development on a global scale for 30 plus years, and my skills are perfect for this position in the House. I do a lot of things like collaborating with people and uniting people and negotiating, and all of those skills will help as I move into this position. And I ask for your vote on June 28th. Thank you.
Thank you. Our first question goes to candidate Evans. What experience prepares you for U.S. Congress?
Yeah, thanks so much. So when it comes to experience, I think it's actually one of the main things we need to be talking about tonight. So like I mentioned, I believe that service is about authenticity, sacrifice. It's about serving other people. And what I've done through my lifetime is after graduating college, I spent a number of years focusing on short-term mission trips. I've been overseas a number of times, serving the poorest of the poor, as well as training missionaries. I've also obviously spent a number of years teaching young people. I've been an educator for 20 years, as well as a small business owner. I started my music school from scratch. No one handed it to me. I also bought a commercial property. No one handed that to me either. And I made sure to go ahead and help my employees keep their jobs during the pandemic. None of my employees lost their job because of the pandemic. And so because of that, I really believe that not only is leadership about service and authenticity, it's specifically about experience. And then not only do you have the acumen to go ahead and serve in Congress, but also do you have the heart and the will? And I believe I have that. Along with that, in high school, I was taking college courses. And in college, I actually did graduate from the Dean's List from Wheaton College. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Hathaway Altman, what experience prepares you for the U.S. Congress?
Yes, my experience really is in many different facets over the years. And again, I've been 30 plus years in corporate America, working for very large companies as well as mid-sized companies. And I own my own small business. And over that time in business development and in 110 countries that I've worked, I've really had the experience of negotiating with, talking to, and collaborating with a great deal of people from multi-cultures. And I feel that that is really a great start. That's really what we need to bring people together in this country again. That's one of our biggest issues right now. I also have excellent skills in finance and in, managing people and doing all the things that I will be doing to manage my time every 5 minutes in a U.S. House seat.
Thank you. Candidate Carroll?
Thank you. When I graduated from college, I had the opportunity to work as a congressional staffer in Congress. I worked for the U.S. House Judiciary Committee, Subcommittee on the Constitution under the chairmanship of Henry Hyde. I'm the only candidate in this race that actually has congressional experience that can go through and identify the legislative and the committee process. I'm the only candidate that's an elected official. I've worked and collaborated with our board and our mayor in balancing budgets every year, making sure that we support our law enforcement through our budgeting so that they have adequate resources for staffing, equipment, technology. As a matter of fact, they're going to start with body cameras pretty soon. That's all part of the responsibility of being an elected official, which I bring to this race and will bring to Washington.
Thank you. Before we move on, I'd like to remind you all to speak at the end of your microphone, not the side. Thanks. All right, this question we're going to start with Susan Hathaway Altman. What do you view as priority tasks for representing the 11th Congressional District?
Priority tasks, there's so many. Cultural transfiguration, I call it, is really number one. I feel that we need to get to a point in this country where we can share our opinions without violence, extreme ideology, collaboration, and making it a better America for everyone, and where Americans can speak freely, come together. But there are so many others. The economy, that is something I have a great deal of experience doing. We really need to tackle the issues, and I'm focusing on solutions and to these issues, such as we really need to get our energy independence back. We really need to fix the supply chain issues, and I am on the supply chain now in senior leadership, and I have been on the supply chain for 30 years, and that is really where the problems are happening mostly in the economy today. We don't even have baby formula for babies in most cases, so it's a big issue.
Thank you. Mark Carroll, your priority tasks.
My priorities would be, number one, is slash the size and scope of the federal government. Number two, we need to reduce our government spending dramatically. We need to require a balanced budget that's passed in a timely manner with all the appropriations bills by September 30th and stop funding our government under continuing resolutions where the sky is falling and our hair is on fire. That happens every year. We need to get back to American energy independence and drilling in federal lands and in all of our natural areas where we can produce our own oil. We produce more, or we have the ability to produce more oil than Saudi Arabia, and we need to tap into that. And we need to comprehensive immigration reform. If we don't do anything when we get elected to Congress, we still have to deal with the Democratic president. So we're going to have to legislate immigration reform, and that should be a first priority.
Thank you. Your priorities, Jerry Evans.
Yeah, thank you. There are so many to count. I think a few that I would suggest right now would be, first off, we need to return to a free economy and free economic principles. We need to push against these socialist-leaning policies of our current administration and curb inflation, as well as the tremendous overspending and printing of money that we have. Secondly, I would care tremendously about securing our border. One of the first things I'd want to do is actually fly down to the southern border to go ahead and find out how I can make an impact to have complete and full immigration reform, but also stop all of the illegal immigration that is happening at the southern border, as well as the human trafficking and the sex trafficking that's happening with innocent young boys and girls. I would also care tremendously about pursuing educational opportunity for our young people. There are so many people, especially in our poorer neighborhoods, who don't have much of an educational opportunity, and I would specifically pursue finding any way that I can to support them, but also making sure that money, specifically the federal money, would follow students to make it easier for them to find an educational opportunity that works for their family.
Thank you. Candidate Carroll, curbing emissions from fossil fuels is necessary to fight climate change. What will you do to support the change from fossil fuels to renewable energy sources?
Well, number one, I believe in the biblical principle of conservation. What has happened over the past 2 years is that the Biden administration has directed a radical green agenda with no alternative energy source, which is why we're seeing such a spike in energy prices. They've shut off the pump for American citizens, and they're intentionally inflicting harm on the citizens of the 11th district and all throughout the country so that they can pass their radical agenda. So the first and foremost, before we pass any sort of market-driven green energy policy, number one, it has to be market-driven. Number two, we can't just cut off the source of our energy without any thought for the next 50 years for infrastructure or design for a green energy infrastructure.
Thank you. Candidate Evans?
Yeah, thanks so much. So I care tremendously about making sure that we have sound energy policy here in America. And my basis and foundation for sound energy policy is actually freedom and choice. I really believe that we need to make sure we reopen the Keystone Pipeline. I believe that we should be energy independent. And while a few years ago we were doing very well in terms of being an energy exporter, we were actually doing quite well in terms of lowering carbon emissions. And that seems counterintuitive, but how did we do that? It was through choice, and it was through the ingenuity of people. And I really believe that the way to go ahead and move forward towards a sustainable future is, again, not the socialist leading agenda. It's actually going to come through ingenuity from people. I'm very, very much against the Green New Deal, but how did Elon Musk pave the way for electric vehicles? It was ingenuity. It was private enterprise, and I support private enterprise, and I return to focusing on that.
Thank you. Candidate Hathaway Altman.
I believe in reasonable efforts towards sustainability, and I feel that what we have to really do is look at this country and where we've come. Because if you remember, not even 3 decades ago, we had a real problem with pollution, just straight up carbon dioxide and sulfur dioxide going into the air. And China still has that problem. So we have to look at the major offenders first when we talk about green and we talk about efforts towards sustainability. So that I want to say that has to be our first priority, to hold them accountable. They're almost as big as we are in GDP, and really hold them accountable to that. Now, having said that, I said earlier, I definitely believe in reasonable efforts to sustainability. I work in the transportation segment, and Delta Airlines is doing a great job now with some of the renewable energy sources that they're using and considering. And I feel that we can all help conserve and use those same types of strategies in our daily lives.
Thank you. Jerry Evans, should voting rights be protected by federal law? Why or why not?
Yeah, I'm glad we asked the question. I think we do need to talk about voting rights, but also election integrity. And of course, we need to make one of the essential elements of our democratic republic is the right to vote. We need to make sure we protect that right to vote at all costs. But also, we need to make sure that we are protecting the vote when it comes to protecting against fraud. And so, for instance, I would be against H.R. 1 because it would actually have mandated ballot harvesting. It would actually eliminate the ability to have voter ID. So I support voter ID. I support the ending of ballot harvesting. And I care tremendously. I actually do not care for no excuse mail-in balloting. And so we need to go ahead and defend the right to vote, but also we need to make sure we defend that right to vote to be fair. And I would stand for that 100%.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Susan Hathaway Altman, should voting rights be protected by federal law?
Well, in the Constitution, the one thing it does say that all Americans have the right to vote and that they should be of legal age, right? So, but it belongs with the states as far as the mechanics of that. So I'm very proud that a lot of states have instituted laws around voting integrity, because I believe that the separation that we are having, this extreme polarization in this country and the cultural difficulties that I talked about earlier, is coming largely from this issue of voter integrity. And I feel that it is not a hard thing to ask that every American have a valid ID to show that it is in fact them and that they are in fact 18 years old and are U.S. Citizens.
Thank you. Mark Carroll.
I definitely believe that the Constitution is very clear on this issue. It specifically states that state legislatures are required to enact voting laws. And we need to get back to upholding the state legislatures' voting laws in their own states. What we saw in 2020 was different secretaries of state, courts, and all kinds of officials outside of the state legislative process redefine our voting laws in the name of COVID or in the name of an emergency. That cannot be tolerated. If our Constitution is not upheld in the times of an emergency, it's not worth the paper it's written in good times. I support voter ID laws, and I support 30-day advance registration to give our voting clerks and officials time to verify the identity of voters.
Thank you. Candidate Hathaway Altman, what is your top concern in the realm of national security, and how would you address it?
Well, it's our open, porous southern border with people flowing through it in the millions. And absolutely, it's a huge problem. I'm not sure why we are not enforcing laws that specifically state that you have to have certain things done before you can be a U.S. citizen. You can't just come into this country illegally. And the illegal migrants that are coming over, many of them are being found that they're on the terrorist watch list, and many of them are being found that they're in cartels or smuggling over, from Mexico, China-made fentanyl and killing U.S. citizens. So, not only violence, but also drug problem, child trafficking, and generally, a country isn't a country without borders.
Thank you. Candidate Carroll, your top concern in the realm of national security.
I would agree that our top national security issue is the invasion at our southern border. It presents a clear and present danger to the safety of every single American in our country. There's drugs pouring in on a daily basis. Those drugs are finding their way into Batavia, Illinois, North Aurora, Illinois, Chicago, Illinois, and we have weak state's attorneys and judges that think it's okay for the police to do their job and then let criminals out that continue transferring drugs in our communities, in our schools, and the crime rates continue to go up in the poorly run Democratic cities, and it's leaking into the suburbs every single day. We see it in the newspapers. We see it in the carjackings, the murders, the fentanyl overdoses, the drug and all drug overdoses, and we need to secure the border immediately.
Candidate Evans.
Yeah, thank you. It's hard to pick necessarily one. I would also concur that I believe that the southern border very well could be our biggest national security threat because of what's happening with drugs pouring across the border, human trafficking pouring across the border, and a host of other problems. So I would very much support finishing building the wall at the southern border where necessary, finding a way to increase funds for immigrations and customs enforcement, and find a way to put more energy and attention to stopping human trafficking. Along with that, though, I would actually posit and suggest that we need to go back to energy independence. We need to go back to energy independence because when it comes to war, whenever you're dealing with an evil bully like Vladimir Putin or Xi Jinping, when you have energy independence, you have a lot more clout and ability to go ahead and do what you need to do and support other nations. And we need to honor our treaties and alliances, and we need to make sure that the bungling of the withdrawal of Afghanistan never happens again.
Thank you. Mark Carroll, how will you connect with constituents across the district?
I will do what I've continued to do since I started my campaign. I will go to different areas and listen to people. As an elected trustee, I've spent 8 years listening to the residents of North Aurora. Our government, our elected officials work well together because we listen to the residents of North Aurora. As a practicing attorney for 20 years, the first thing I do is I listen to my clients. Then I roll up my sleeves and we discuss solutions for whatever problems they used to have when they came into my office when I was in private practice. Today, I sit as general counsel for a mortgage company, and we tackle compliance, risk, and legal issues every single day. So my job is to reach out and find consensus, build consensus, and to draw people to the ideas that I have. I will continue to do that and take those skill sets to Congress.
Thank you. Jerry Evans.
I think one of the most tremendous opportunities that I find when it comes to running for public office is just simply the opportunity to listen to people. It's actually humbling. As I've been able to tour the district at different events and had an opportunity just to listen to the incredible, hardworking and humble people in this district, it actually is humbling for me. And one of the things I've told other people before is that as I've come out here and had the opportunity to visit with people in this district, it's almost as if I've just fallen in love with the people because of how amazing that they are. And so number one, again, just to recap, I would focus on listening. And then number two, making sure that I would be available so that people listen. I think sometimes when people get to positions of influence or power, they forget about making themselves available, and I would really cherish and care tremendously about making myself available so that I'm representing the district in Washington, D.C., not representing Washington, D.C. to the district.
Thank you. Susan Hathaway Altman.
Thanks. I have a plan around this, and I do have it on my website. And what I am going to do is three-faceted. First of all, I'm going to open my office because right now in our district, our office is not open, or I should say, what will be our district. So I'm going to open the office, and I'm going to make sure that I'm available every day that I'm here and not doing any congressional duties to hear what is on people's minds and maybe help them attack problems that they're having in their particular communities. Next, I do a lot of listening as well, and walking. I do, events. I am, going to different areas within the district. But I will set up a Zoom call once per month. In the first half of the call will be me talking about what's going on, what I'm authoring, what bills I'm working on in Congress, and the other half of the call will be what do you need from me. So I have a specific plan on really collaborating.
Thank you. Candidate Evans, would you alter Medicaid, Medicare, or Social Security? If so, how?
Yeah, great question. So I think one thing I would say about that is I want to be very clear that we need to make sure we maintain Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. I really believe that we do need to have a safety net for those people who might potentially be in weak positions, like those who might need Medicaid or Medicare. So I want to let you know that I do believe we need to maintain the integrity of those programs. However, right now, the federal government is getting ourselves deeper and deeper and deeper into debt and putting our children and our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren at risk. And we need to go ahead and find a way to balance our budget and find a way to do that, not only by seeing if there's a way we can make Medicare or Medicaid or Social Security more efficient and more effective, but also with other discretionary programs. And so it's a very complex issue. I honestly wish we had about 6 hours to discuss that one particular issue, but with the time I have, I will leave it at that. Thank you.
Candidate Hathaway Altman.
No, I will not. And I have to say, we are at great risk because of the open, porous southern border that we have right now. Because if you think about it, so a couple of million people have already come in illegally, right? Those entitlement programs, we have to really watch, because when people of that magnitude come in, and there might be 3, 4, 5 million, that really adds to our populace. And it also adds to the people that may seriously need some help. So that is my main concern, is the threat to those programs if we continue to let people in without any laws enforced.
Thank you. Candidate Carroll.
The short answer is no. I would not do anything to alter Medicare, Medicaid, or Social Security. However, I do believe that we should have incentives to get back to work in our Medicaid program. Bill Clinton in the 1990s was forced by the House Republicans to enact and sign into law welfare reform, which included a provision for back to work. And that worked. And I think so from that standpoint, we need to get people back to work as quickly as possible. As far as Medicare and Social Security go, one of the things that I've promoted is I believe in a constitutional amendment that requires any act of Congress to apply to Congress equally, every federal worker. For years, Congress people have exempted themselves from requirements of Social Security, Medicare. Can you imagine what would happen if they were subject to Social Security and Medicare? Medicare would have free prescription drugs, and Social Security would be solvent for 1,000 years.
Thank you. Susan Hathaway Altman, what can be done about inflation at this point?
Oh, sure. So there are several things that can be done. I joke and I say I'm going to, have my plan enacted, and it's called Susanomics. And it's very, I take some of the elements from the late Ronald Reagan and his economic plan, and I think it worked well. We have a macroeconomic problem here, and we also have a lack of leadership and solutions. So I would first restore U.S. energy independence. I don't think we have to beat that one up anymore because we have. But in addition to opening the pipeline, I'd build refineries, and I would refine oil here because we haven't built new refineries since the 70s. I'd bring back U.S. manufacturing. By lowering the tax base, providing incentives for businesses to scale up and come to Illinois and be able to afford the raw materials that they put into their products. And I'll correct that supply chain issue because I am the best on this panel to be able to do that. And I'm going to stop our reliance on China and other markets, and I'm going to make sure that the Fed has the right policies and not loose policies because it's been the highest in 40 years.
Thank you.
Inflation.
Mark Carroll.
First, like I said before, I would decrease the size and scope of the federal government. That needs to happen. Number two, I would decentralize the federal government and get the federal government out of decision making, get out of the market, bring that power of the government back to the states and the local governments where it belongs and where it can unleash the ingenuity, technology, job growth, wage growth of the people and get the federal government out of the way. Number three, I would deregulate and dismantle the fourth branch of government where I've seen firsthand how it chokes out. We spend more money on compliance and risk in our businesses than we do on job creation, job growth, wage growth, and technology and innovation. And we need to get the federal government out of our market.
Jerry Evans, what can be done about inflation?
Yeah, thank you. That also could be another 6-hour issue, but we'll stick to 1 minute here. So first off, what I would do is I would propose and suggest a constitutional amendment to balance the budget. That would be a steep task, but I firmly believe we need that. In addition to that, we need to spend responsibly and stop the overspending that causes us to have to print money at absurd rates. And so, when we see our recent infrastructure bill, in 2021, there were some helpful things that are helpful for infrastructure because I believe that supporting our infrastructure is a good thing, an important thing. However, when there is a large amount of that bill that's funding pet projects for Congress people or other special interests, that's hurting the American people. And you know who else that's hurting? That's hurting our children and our grandchildren. So I believe we need to, again, return to sound spending, have a constitutional amendment to balance the budget, and we need to have the will to make the tough decisions. Because I run a music school, and as you can probably tell, my profit margins are not that of maybe the iPhone or Tesla. And so we have to balance our budget to make sure we stay in business, and we've done that successfully, and that's what I would take to Congress.
Thank you. Candidate Carroll, do you believe the U.S. should fund support for the Ukraine government?
I fully support the sovereignty and the ability of the Ukrainian people to defend themselves against what we've seen as a brutal dictator. The problem I have is that we have the weakest president in modern history at our helm, and weakness begets aggression. the entire world watched as President Biden, botched the withdrawal from Afghanistan. I do not trust Joe Biden and his diplomatic team to be the ones that are negotiating or pushing back on what we've seen as a brutal, unrecognizable dictator or dictator, and we need to get to a point where we have a president that shows strength to our allies and our enemies. That's not Joe Biden. I have no faith that he will do what's necessary, and the stakes are too high.
Thank you. Candidate Evans.
Yeah, and just to clarify, I want to make sure I heard the question correctly. Can you clarify the question?
Do you believe the U.S. should fund support for the Ukraine government?
Yeah, great, thank you. So right now, given what's happened, unfortunately, because of our weak foreign policy and Joe Biden being the weakest or one of the weakest presidents in American history, Vladimir Putin has chosen to try to take over Ukraine. I do believe we should be supporting Ukraine with funds. I believe we should also be supporting them, helping to arm them. But at the same time, I do not believe we should be sending troops to Ukraine. And I think that, I know we could talk about this for a long time, but I think one of the key things that can actually help the Ukrainian people is to cause evil people like Vladimir Putin or Xi Jinping to bluff and be concerned because of the strength and resolves of the U.S. foreign policy. And so I think we need to go back to a foreign policy of peace through strength, and actually that would, I think, heavily impact what would happen in Ukraine, but also in other nations as well.
Candidate Hathaway Altman.
Yes, it's so hard because my natural reaction would be, absolutely, we need to go in there, we need to really show them what's what. But we had a very weak response, and it was a little too late. And so the $40 billion that was presented today and looks like we're going to send is definitely too much for our economy right now to handle. So I am very conflicted. I feel that we should have had a better plan. There was no plan, right? There was no strategy. And the underwriter of this conflict, it's not just about Putin, it's Xi Jinping, and he is the one who underwrote this. And I believe that we need to really bolster up our military, develop a Cold War model, but we first have to take care of our own house.
Thank you. Jerry Evans, do you support legislation that overturns the effects of Citizens United, determining that free speech pertains only to people, not corporations?
Can you say that one more time?
Sure. Do you support legislation that overturns the effects of Citizens United, determining that free speech pertains only to people, not corporations?
Yeah, just to clarify, I would say I believe that in the First Amendment, and I believe that the First Amendment applies to all people in the United States of America. So I would not support Citizens United that would try to go ahead and limit speech in one way or the other. And so just to be very, very clear, I care tremendously about the First Amendment, not only when it comes to freedom of speech, but religious liberty, as well as the right to assemble and a number of other things.
Thank you. Susan Hathaway Altman.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would never, ever, ever agree to something like that. And we lack free speech in this country right now because of this exact issue. Big tech has run our lives for a couple of years. And now, all of a sudden, because, Donald Trump bought, a social media platform and Elon Musk is going to take over Twitter, all of a sudden there's going to be a ministry of truth. Is this America? Absolutely not. We can't have laws that in any way impede the Constitution or any of its amendments.
Thank you. Mark Carroll.
I believe in free speech, and I believe if the law treats corporations the same way it treats individuals under the law, then they should be able to advocate for whatever position they want. However, it's not smart. When what we've seen over the last 2 years is woke corporations that are advocating for crazy agenda-driven items in speech, and they automatically alienate 50% of the marketplace. So while I believe in free speech, I do not advocate for businesses alienating their customer base. I do believe in the right to deny your service or your product to certain categories if it interferes with your personal closely held religious beliefs. And I believe in the First Amendment. And I think the First Amendment protects speech, all speech.
Thank you. Candidate Hathaway Altman, what is your position on campaign finance reform?
I'm not a specialist at this issue, but I can say that I am sure there are areas that need to be delved into for campaign finance reform. In being in this system now and have filed with the FEC and actually providing my disclaimer of all of my personal assets and that kind of thing, it's pretty buttoned down, I must say. I mean, I think it's come a long way. We are held to a very high standard already, but I do believe in looking into that matter because I want to make sure that voters are very comfortable in voting for the right candidates for the right reasons. And I have to say, coming up, as the Founding Fathers have taught us to do, in a grassroots type of way is very difficult if you don't have big money behind you, right? So I think that definitely some things need to be looked into.
Thank you. Candidate Carroll.
I certainly would welcome campaign finance reform in our system. I think our federal elections are aimed at picking the richest candidates instead of the best candidates. I'm not a millionaire. If elected to Washington, I don't intend to become a millionaire while I'm serving in Washington. It's not service to the people that I represent. It's self-serving. If you're like me, and this is, I think, one area where Democrats and Republicans can agree on, we've got way too many out-of-touch, lifetime millionaire representatives that represent themselves and they don't represent the voters in their districts. We need to take the money out so that we can get the best candidates that can get the job done and move America forward.
Thank you. Candidate Evans.
Yeah, I think I'll comment on two specific things. I think the first thing is from a philosophical perspective. I really care tremendously about freedom of speech, but also I believe, giving money or volunteering to a campaign or taking action to help a campaign, I believe that is speech. We need to make sure that's protected and not infringed upon from a philosophical perspective. Now, flipping to practically what could be done with campaign finance issues or campaign finance reform, one thing that is, I think, startling to me that I'd be open to look at is for a congressional campaign, for instance. Right now someone can give, or an individual can give $2,900 to a congressional campaign. However, someone else, let's say a millionaire or a billionaire, could turn around and give to a super PAC in support of that campaign maybe $1 million or $10 million or $50 million if they want to. And it just seems quite uneven to me, and it doesn't seem to make sense, and I think that's something that we should be looking at.
Mark Carroll, how do you see the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act specifically impacting District 11?
Well, it was supposed to be shovel ready. I haven't seen any shovels yet. So I would say that we spent way too much money that we don't have. However, infrastructure is the one area where Republicans and Democrats seem like they can build consensus. However, there was no reduction in cost to make that type of an expenditure. And it included areas of infrastructure that weren't infrastructure. Our system, our current system in Congress, is broken in that all of the structures are aimed at congressmen getting reelected. So all of that pork that gets filled into those bills, it comes out of our pocket, our children's pocket. I have 3 children that will be paying off that infrastructure bill for years and decades to come. So we need to start getting smart with our money and start getting smart with the people we elect to office.
Thank you. Jerry Evans.
Yeah, so I would suggest, first off, from a basic principle, I think it was good to look at finding ways to improve the infrastructure of the United States of America. I think we should have had an infrastructure bill to go ahead and develop our country more and move our country forward, especially for our children and grandchildren. However, that particular bill, that infrastructure bill that has been passed, it was so bad in the form that it was passed, I would not have voted for it because of what I've mentioned before, because only a small part really went to genuine infrastructure, and then a large portion specifically went to pet projects and other issues that actually inflated the national debt as well as contributed to inflation. And the last time I checked, when we are creating bills that might potentially do a small amount to help infrastructure, but then putting a burden on our children, I think it's a bad idea. And so we need to have good infrastructure, but get rid of the wasteful spending.
Thank you. Susan Hathaway Altman.
Yes, I agree with what they both said, and I probably would have said a lot of that myself. But the Build Back Better plan, we really need to pull back on that. There's all kinds of categories in there, and some of the spending is questionable. And we really have to move to not only eliminating debt, but even cutting a little bit more into it. So something pragmatic that we could do once we pull back on that bill and really wait, but we have to wait some time because we cannot have our escalating deficit going like crazy, because we definitely don't want to get into an inflation that is 1,000,000% like Venezuela. We have to really remember that that could happen to us. So we have to be very, very careful. And in addition to pulling back on Build Back Better, I would take a 10% cut across all categories in federal spending today in the departments, not in the entitlement programs, to even go even deeper in that, because we definitely need that money to rebuild in the future.
Thank you. Candidate Evans, do you support term limits for congressmen and senators?
100%. And I would absolutely stand for term limits for Congress people as well as for senators, including many other offices as well. So 100%. I think that when it comes to term limits, the reason that we bring up term limits or have this discussion is because we have people that are career politicians and they've gotten cozy. They've gotten cozy in Washington, D.C. They have their nice homes. They're not connected with the district, and they start representing Washington, D.C. in their district instead of representing their district in Washington, D.C. So I absolutely believe we need to have term limits, and I'd be open to the discussion of what those term limits would necessarily be. But we need people who are everyday Americans. They have everyday jobs, and when they go to U.S. Congress, they go and serve the American people because they came from an everyday job. And then when they come back, guess what? They come and have an everyday job to serve people.
Candidate Hathaway Altman.
Yes, I absolutely agree with term limits, and our founding fathers did not intend for this to happen. So I agree with Jerry, and I can tell you that if I am voted in office, I'm a very humble person. I will not be overspending, and I won't spend my time in Washington unless I have business there or at swanky parties. I'm going to make sure that I'm doing the right things, and I think that that goes along with being very comfortable in your position. So I definitely feel that, depending on the position, we should all have term limits.
Candidate Carroll.
I absolutely do believe in a constitutional amendment requiring term limits. As a matter of fact, so far I'm the only candidate that's actually put out a policy statement that describes our entire outline and priorities for our campaign and how we would govern. And in there, we talk about congressional term limits because it's the first step to restoring trust in our elected officials. One of the overwhelming sounds that I've heard walking this district is the distrust in our current elected leaders. Bill Foster's been in for 12 years, and he doesn't come back to the district unless it's time to get reelected. People are sick and tired of unresponsive elected officials that don't pay attention. They ignore. They leave us out of the process. They ignore us, and they're not responsive or serving our interests. They're serving their own.
Can I correct, Mark? I do have my plan published as well.
Okay, thank you.
Susan Hathaway Altman, do you support legislation to ensure a woman's right to control her personal health care?
Well, if you mean abortion, the answer is absolutely not. So no one really knows what it's like to be a mother unless you've birthed a child like I have. And it's the most wonderful experience I've had in my life, and there's nothing like the feeling of giving birth and also raising wonderful children like I have here tonight. And abortion regret is a huge issue, even though this issue has been rebuffed. And, I feel that there is absolutely no way that this issue should have been federal in the first place. Roe versus Wade, that must go back to the states, and the people need to decide. The people need to decide. They are the ones that are in control of that issue. It's not an enumerated right listed in the Constitution, abortion. So again, that is my answer, and I am very solid on that.
Mark Carroll.
I believe in the right to life. It's enumerated in the Declaration and it's codified in the Constitution. I believe the right to life outweighs a woman's right to privacy, which I do believe exists in the Constitution. There is a right to privacy. It's the same right to privacy that allows us to not be dictated by the federal government to wear a mask or to have an injection of a vaccine. I believe that what we should be looking at, to direct it at your question, is with the leaked opinion on Roe versus Wade, is who leaked it? Why is the media covering this? This just goes to show that the Democrats will do whatever it takes to stay in power. They are marching on Supreme Court Justices' homes right now as we speak, and we have a president who's actually breaking the law by encouraging them to do that, and the legislature crickets. Congress is not doing its job.
Jerry Evans.
I believe an unborn child is a person and has a right to live, period. I'm strongly pro-life. I believe we need to take care of the weak and defenseless. And what better than to take care of the weak and defenseless child in a mother's womb? And so, of course, we want people to make their own individual healthcare decisions for themselves and their bodies. But, of course, an unborn child is a different body inside a woman's body. And you can't make the scientific argument to say that they're the same body, because they're not. And so I do strongly stand for protecting unborn children, but also at the same time, in relation to people making their own healthcare decisions, I believe both women and men have an opportunity to do that. And for instance, should not have been forced to have a vaccine if they didn't feel like it was right for them, or a number of other health decisions. And so for me, whereas I would strongly encourage people to have their own freedom when it comes to the vaccine, I've had a history of adverse reactions, and so my doctors encouraged me to not have it. I made that choice for myself, and I'm doing quite well because of that.
This question is piggybacks on the previous one. Candidate Carroll, where do you stand on the life issue as in assisted suicide?
I believe that life begins at conception and life ends when there's no longer any brain function in a human being. Natural death. I do not believe in assisted suicide. As a matter of fact, I actually participated when I was in Washington, D.C. in hearings on euthanasia and assisted suicide. I was against it then. I'm against it now.
Candidate Evans.
Yeah, I am 100% against assisted suicide. I believe in a compassionate society, and I don't believe assisted suicide is a appropriate element of a compassionate society. I believe that we need to be finding ways and doing everything we can to provide health care and to provide mental health care for those who are struggling with issues that would make them want to think about suicide. And I really believe that the answer is not ending someone's life. The answer is to come and help bring someone life, whether it be through emotional support or mental support or some other form of health care. So again, I'd be 100% against assisted suicide.
Candidate Hathaway Altman.
Yes, I think I mentioned that I'm going to be a new ombudsman for long-term care in the Illinois Department of Aging in Aurora. And what we do is we go around and we visit people that are assigned to us in long-term care facilities and ask them if they're having any issues and concerns. And I can tell you that I care a lot about our aging population. I also had my father who had Alzheimer's that just passed away recently at my house for 2 years, and I was taking care of him. And I can tell you that that would never be an option for me. And I feel that our aged are some of the most fragile but most intelligent and most incredible people of the population. And I don't agree that that's right. And I agree with the definition. And federally, if I'm asked to define what is life, it's from conception to natural death.
Thank you. Let's move to closing statements. Jerry Evans.
Okay, and we get 1 minute, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. So again, thank you so much to the League of Women Voters to putting this on and for allowing me to be here. It's an honor to be here. And again, I'm running for U.S. Congress in the 11th Congressional District. I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a small businessman that started a business from scratch, bought a commercial property without major help, and made sure my employees kept their job through the pandemic. And I want to let you know that along with being a person that can connect with independents as well as soft Democrats to help win the 11th district, I'm also a strong conservative. I care tremendously about upholding the Constitution and our First Amendment rights and our Second Amendment rights, et cetera, et cetera. But when it comes to winning this district, the voters of this district can know that I'm, as a strong conservative, but someone who can reach the independents and soft Democrats. I also have a strong record of fundraising. And whenever you have a district with about 700,000 people, you have to have the ability to go ahead and reach them through advertising. I've done that successfully, and I believe I can go ahead and win this election and represent conservatives in Congress and allow Bill Foster to have a respectful retirement. Thank you.
Thank you. Susan Hathaway Altman.
Well, I'm here at the League of Women Voters tonight, and here I am, right? So I just want you to know that I am committed to the 11th District of Illinois. This might not be an easy forum. This might be a little scary, which it is. Obviously, we don't do this for a living, but I'm here, and I'm tough, and I will fight for everyone in the 11th District. And I listen, and I collaborate with people, and I bring people together and unite people. And I listen to people of every walk of life, and I want to know their opinions on these very, very hard issues. I care about the aged, I care about our young people, and I just want you to know that no matter what, we are going to get this seat in November, and we will have a better America. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark Carroll.
Thank you. America is at a tipping point, and we need to elect someone who has experience to get things done. As the youngest of 9 kids, I learned to advocate for myself and beliefs early on. As a Hillsdale College grad, I know the proper nature and role of the U.S. Constitution and our government. I'm the only candidate in this race that has firsthand knowledge of how the legislative and committee process works. I'm the only candidate who reads and interprets laws on a daily basis. As a 20-year attorney, I'm the only candidate who's rolled up my sleeves and solved problems for business owners, individuals, families, and seniors. I'm the only candidate who oversees the legal and compliance teams of a major company. I'm the only candidate who deals every day with the extreme overreach of unelected regulatory agencies. I'm the only candidate elected to public office twice. The contrast is clear. I'm asking for your vote in the June 28th primary. My name is Mark Joseph Carroll. Look for me at the bottom of the ballot. I'm the last one. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.
Thank you. Our time is up for this forum. For further election information, please see the IllinoisVoterGuide.org, powered by the League of Women Voters of Illinois, or consult the League of Women Voters of U.S.'s Vote 411 online voter guide. Both are 100% nonpartisan election information you need. A link to this recording will be located on each of the sponsoring League of Women Voters websites. Go to your local area league website for more information. We appreciate your participation, whether you are a candidate or a voter. It's essential to preserving our freedom and our country. Please remember to vote, whether it is vote by mail, early voting, or on election day. So please join me in giving the candidates a round of applause.
Thank you.
Good job. God bless.